One of the most anticipated face-offs is about to occur in the Battle of Zama between two of the greatest generals of the era, the fierce Hannibal Barca and the strong Scipio Africanus. However, to understand how we got here, we must first take a step back. Well, more like a couple of steps back. The time period was 218 BC. The Carthaginians and Romans had already faced off once before in the fittingly named First Punic War. The conflict ended with the Romans emerging as the victors. The already humiliating loss had resulted in Carthage having to pay tons of silver as reparations. Under the leadership of Hannibal, his father Hamilcar, and his brother Hasdrubal Barca, the Carthaginians were able to build a strong base in Spain, gaining many valuable natural resources, like silver. They were able to conquer many natives, and with this newfound wealth, the Carthaginians were able to pay back the large amount of money that the Romans had desired. As a result, the Carthaginians were back in power, baby. However, in this rapid expansion of the Carthaginian Empire, they had the absolute genius idea — that was sarcasm if you didn't catch it, by the way — to invade Saguntum, an independent city on the east coast of the Iberian Peninsula. Unbeknownst to the Carthaginians, they were best friends with the Romans and went golfing together every Friday night. So when the Carthaginians invaded, the Romans were extremely happy. Kidding, they were mad, and real mad at that. They kindly requested, with force, that the Carthaginians leave their buddies alone, and when they didn't, they declared war on the Carthaginians, sparking the Second Punic War. So the Romans decided they were actually pretty mad at the Carthaginians, and because the Romans were the dominant force in the Mediterranean Sea due to the First Punic War, Hannibal Barca decided to come up with a plan nobody would anticipate. He decided to cross the Alps. The reason no one anticipated Hannibal crossing the Alps was because it was a strenuous journey, basically a suicide mission. The Carthaginians started with 9,000 infantry and 12,000 cavalry. Any guesses for how many survive? Anyone? A whopping 20,000 infantry and 6,000 cavalry survived. This means 70,000 infantry died and 6,000 cavalry died.
Soldiers, we're gonna cross the Alps and beat the Romans until they flee. Who's with me? Okay, we may have lost a few men. It's okay, guys. Free cookies if you survive.
They crossed the Alps and arrived at the Po River in the first major battle of the Second Punic War, called the Battle of Ticinus. The Romans were severely outmatched by the Carthaginian Numidian cavalry. Furthermore, the Romans thought this would be a walk in the park, since the Carthaginians had just crossed the Alps. Keep in mind, crossing the Alps was a treacherous journey, so the Romans were justified in underestimating them. But this is Hannibal we're talking about, the absolute goat of warfare. The Carthaginians stormed through Gaul. The Gauls were all, hey, instead of dying by fighting the Carthaginians, let's just join them. And so they did. Hannibal pushed further and further down. A commander named Consul Flaminius, thinking that they saw Hannibal only a few miles away, decided to march and launch a preemptive strike. Unbeknownst to him, Hannibal was actually about to jump Flaminius from the mountains, like a Heinlein video popping up on your For You page before an AP history exam. Hannibal was able to take down the Roman legion and win the battle. Not yet wanting to invade Rome, he decided to shift his focus on Cannae. The Romans, now threatened by the new power of the Carthaginians, decided to assemble a gigantic army with 80,000 infantry and 6,000 cavalry. However, Hannibal, expecting this, situated himself strategically. He lured the Romans into an encirclement and absolutely destroyed them, ending in a huge Carthaginian victory and a Roman massacre. The Romans were now under a new leadership, of Quintus Fabius Maximus Cunector. He decided that rather than utilizing the true Roman fashion of just charging head-on into war, he would rather just not fight Hannibal and run away, or as he might call it, a strategic retreat. It turns out that this tactic worked, causing Hannibal to deplete his resources. Now, with Hannibal being occupied, the Romans decided to launch a counter-offensive under the commander Scipio Africanus, a new, young, and upcoming commander. He was tasked to get rid of the resource-rich Spain that the Carthaginians owned. Scipio went on a rampage and secured many victories on the Iberian Peninsula, even defeating Hannibal's brother, Hasdrubal. Each victory made him more and more confident, till he decided to strike the Carthaginians at their homeland, Africa. The Carthaginians surrendered originally, but they had an ace up their sleeve, a joker. They'll never see it coming. And this last surprise was Hannibal Barca himself. Hannibal was delayed due to fatigued troops, and Scipio took the initiative, advancing southwest, threatening the Carthaginian grain supply. Hannibal was compelled to march towards Scipio. When they finally met, although seeming outnumbered, the Romans for once had a superior cavalry to the Carthaginians, thanks to their alliance with Massinissa, an exiled Numidian prince. Scipio was able to avoid the chaos of the Carthaginian troops, and ultimately brought victory to the Romans, leaving the Carthaginians begging for mercy. They then agreed that Carthage would accept Rome's terms of peace, be forced to pay an indemnity, surrender its navy, and lose Spain and its Mediterranean islands. This was a huge loss for the Carthaginians. However, they still remained strong traders. However, the Romans didn't like this. So when the Carthaginians resisted Roman expansion once more, the Romans declared war, sparking the Third Punic War.
We're not supposed to actually cover the Third Punic War. However, it is pretty short compared to the other two. Basically, they went to war again, and Carthage lost. This time, the Romans did not give them another chance and destroyed their empire. What is left of the once mighty empire of Carthage is now buried under the weight of history.